It snows all the time, wants to follow in the footsteps of giants, but fails to live up to the expectations. Film follows a family going through a rough patch. Father is diagnosed with dementia, and the movie focuses on how the family deals with him and his disease. Dementia is a very tough subject matter to deal with because the symptoms are hard to display, and it is a dark subject that feels very unfair. With that in mind, I expected the film to focus on the emotions of the family members and how they dealt with the initial news and how they coped with seeing their father's diminishing state. We do see a bit of this, but the parts we get are short, disjointed, and unclear. We're told how the brothers feel about their father, but the movie never spends any time with them. We never learn what Art does around the house or anything about Tony's life aside from his marital problems. In fact, the movie spends most of its time on Jesse and his day-to-day life. We watch Jesse get praised at work, see his relationship fall apart, and witness his new relationship unfold. But we don't see the emotional turmoil that Jesse is going through. The film lacks a main story. It doesn't have story arcs, and instead it presents a collection of events, loosely ties them together, but not in a clever way. Most of the time the events feel disjointed or out of place. The movie takes place over the course of several months to a year, but fails to signal the time changes in a way that the audience might notice. It becomes hard to keep the timeline straight, and the pacing of the film really suffers for it. Dialogue is also a big issue. Most of the film's interactions sound like cliché lines from other films that were hastily copied, and the rest must have been written by someone who doesn't talk to other people very often. Everyone speaks like they're a character in a soap opera, trying to push the story along. They don't speak like real people. The acting doesn't help much. Most of these actors look and sound as though they just learned their lines 5 minutes ago, and only the mother and father display any real emotion. Leslie Ann Warren, the mother, and Brett Cullen, the father, fully commit to their roles and put on a really good show. I was drawn into the movie when either of them is on screen, and both do a wonderful job of portraying their characters. Jesse's two girlfriends had zero chemistry with him, and when April was on screen, I constantly got a Stockholm Syndrome vibe from her. To be fair to the actors, the script and the dialogue are subpar, and there isn't much there for them to work with. The film also neglects emotional reactions and spends a lot of time cutting from person to person as they talk. The camera zooms around but doesn't get good shots of people reacting to lines, and often fails to capture their body language in a meaningful way. The characters aren't in focus, or the shot is too zoomed out to see detailed reactions. The biggest visual issue is how little time the film is willing to spend on any one shot. The camera is constantly cutting around, and it creates this hectic feeling even when the scene doesn't call for it. At times they cut away from emotional moments and overlay something less important over them, and it takes all the strength out of these scenes. On top of the other problems are a plethora of sound mixing failures. Background noise is often a pre-recorded track that sounds out of place and is loud enough to overpower the actors' voices. There are also times when the film leaves the background noise out entirely, and it creates an unnatural silence. The dialogue varies in volume, and in a couple of scenes is almost impossible to hear it all. There's one scene in particular in the hospital where two doctors are trying to yell over a machine, but the man that they're talking to is clearly recording his lines in a studio because the machine's noises disappear while he's talking. The songs the film uses are very soap opera-y, and while they do feel like genuine attempts at eliciting emotion, it all ends up sounding very overdramatic and out of touch with the dialogue and acting. I was pretty disappointed with this film, and I have a hard time recommending it to anyone else with how bad the audio and writing are. I struggle to rate it at all because there's nothing redeeming about this film aside from a few half-decent performances, and there's certainly nothing to learn from it. I would give it a 2 of 10 at best. The 2 points go to each of the actors that tried the hardest: Leslie Ann Warren and Brett Cullen.